This is the hurdle that you have to cross. In order to really break forward with God, you're going to have to break out of that old wineskin of the church that the church has put around your life. Okay, again, not the 200 or 300. It's the 2 or 3. Are you willing to find other people today that will just go forward because of Jesus and Jesus alone? If you are, I think God will use you, raise you up. Take your 2 or 3 that you find and get right in the midst of it like Jesus promised he would do. He said, if there's 2 or 3 gathered together in my name, I'm right there in the midst of them. If we can get back to that, God will break out again, because that takes faith. This is what I'm talking about. Put faith to practical work in your life where it comes to being a believer, being a Christian, being a part of the church. Which is really not church, it's call. Being a part of the call. We're all provoking and encouraging each other to follow the call of God. And in particular, follow that great heavenly call that we have together as his body. How many times did Jesus warn us and say, things like, don't let your lamps go dry in oil. Make sure you have enough oil. Make sure that you have more than enough. Don't be like the 5 foolish virgins who just had enough to make it part way, but then ran out. Be like the 5 wise virgins who had extra prepared ahead of time, thought in advance. Be ready so that when the day comes that he does come back, you'll be found in faith. You'll be one of the few. It's kind of like the Marines, the few, the proud. You'll be one of the few. It's not going to be the many. That's a false doctrine in the church. It's not going to be the many. There will be many by some standards, but it will not be the many by the standards of the way that we think in mainstream Christianity today. It will be the few. But make sure that it's you. Blind Bartimaeus was told to be quiet, to sit down, to shut his mouth. That not only they rebuked him, but they said, hold your peace. I'm here to tell you, hold your cry. Hold your faith. Let those dogs out. Don't let somebody tell you to shut up. What was blind Bartimaeus' response to this? And I already told you that now it doesn't give us his name here in this particular account, but it does in one of the other gospels. His name meant son of Timaeus. Timaeus was his father's name. What did Timaeus mean? Timaeus means unclean. So Bartimaeus came from an unclean situation, an unclean family. Who knows what sort of things that he had, that he was up against, that were hanging off of his life just because of the family that he came from. You know, there are spiritual things that are handed down in our family. The sins of the fathers passed down. And so blind Bartimaeus wasn't just any blind man. He was a guy that was really up against it. The Bible is alluding to the fact that maybe the reason that he was in the condition even of being blind is because there was an unclean spirit or something like that. A spirit of infirmity attached to his life. You see, healing's not always a matter of just a physical sickness. Sometimes it's a spirit that is creating the physical sickness. And Jesus dealt with both kinds of situations. The woman that was bent down, that was bowed down for 18 years, in one of the synagogues that he spoke in, it was said of her, she had a spirit of infirmity. So the way you deal with the spirit is different than the way you just deal with a sickness. And so just stop and realize it here. It does not matter how big the situation you're up against seems. Jesus will set you free no matter what the root and the origin or the cause of your circumstance is. Blind Bartimaeus had lots of things against him. And there's lots of reasons why people didn't want to have anything to do with him. There's lots of reasons why these people told him to sit down, to be quiet, to get back to his corner on the roadside over there begging for alms, because in their religious way of thinking, that's where he belonged. But it's not where he belonged, because God loves everybody. We're all equal at the foot of the cross. So what did blind Bartimaeus do? What did he do? Again, you can find this story again in Mark chapter 10. But what did he do? He cried out the first time they told him to shut up. What was his response? The first time he didn't know what was going on, so he asked. He inquired, he did research, he investigated what's going on. And when they told him, he immediately cried out because he knew, if it's Jesus, I can get an answer. So he cried out. And then they told him to shut up. But what was his third response? It says right here in the second part of the 39th verse, it says, but he cried out so much more. I want you to get a picture today of what faith really is. This is what it is. When everybody else says, be quiet, faith says, no, I won't be quiet. When everybody else says, don't talk about Jesus. Don't let people know that you're a believer. Faith says, no, I'm going to let everybody know, because my calling is to the world to be someone who releases the message of Jesus so other people can receive the benefits of God's goodness, so that other people can come in contact with God's power, so that faith can rise up in other people's heart like it has mine. Bartimaeus cried out so much the more. Now I need you to make a note of the second word. It's a different word. The first word, cry, is the word halloo, means let the dogs out. It means to scream hello. But this word is the word kradzo, and I like it equally as much. It means to croak as a raven, or to scream out, to shriek out. So what happened was Bartimaeus cried out, and then when they told him to shut up, he got worse. He didn't get better. He started croaking like a raven. Now, have you ever heard the crows, they come up around your roof or around your yard? I mean, I can't stand the crows, the nasty sounds that they make, and they're just a nasty, unclean bird. And the way that the sounds that they make just exemplify that. And everybody basically thinks of them the same way. And that's what this word means. He started croaking like a raven. He started shrieking and screaming. And I mean, it was hard to listen to. That's the definition here, the picture that's being painted for us. This was hard to hear. When they told him to shut up, that would have been hard for him to hear. So he just got himself to a level where it was hard for them to hear him. He was going to push through, and he was going to break through. I think blind Bartimaeus understood this was his one shot. Jesus is coming by. He may never come by again. Let me tell you today, right now, for you to break out of everything that's been encrusted around your Christian life, if you're a believer, if you're not a believer, you're just an American, for every bit of the culture that's been encrusted around your life, okay, you've got to break it off. You got to do something radical. You can't just sit by and do what everybody else is doing. That's not enough. That was not enough. Jesus didn't tell people, hey, if you're just like the Pharisees or the Sadducees, that'll be enough. No, he said it's going to require something absolutely new. An absolute new wineskin. The old wineskins cannot contain what God is doing next. They're old. They're cracked. They'll break. The wineskin have to be fresh. They have to be new. Now, you could take an old wineskin in Bible days and you could make it new and flexible again so it wouldn't crack with all that acid in the new wine. But it had to go back through a process. The process that we normally go through as we're growing up in God the first time. That's what makes us flexible. That's what makes us able to hold what it is that God's called us to do, that hold what it is that God has called us to carry, to give away to other people. So you can, one way or the other, if you're a religious mainstream person, you can flex if you want to, but you've got to have the want to. But I tell you, in some ways it's easier if you're not. It's easier if you haven't been in the mainstream. But either way today, God's calling both people. But you got to have this second cry. You got to get the crazy cry, the kradzo cry, the raven cry, the hopping, the ravens. When I see them around my house, the crows or whatever, they hop around and yell and attack other birds and steal other nests and take the food from it. That's how they just get crazy. I kind of picture when I was a kid, we had the Disney cartoons or I forget what the Warner Brother cartoons or whatever they were. But we had the one with Daffy Duck, and Daffy Duck would always get raving crazy mad or crazy upset. And he would start hopping around. He would hop on his feet, hop on his head. He would always get blown up and get frazzled. But just picture that today, if you know what that looks like. Daffy Duck, just when he got loose, he got crazy. And that's what faith does. Faith does not take no for an answer. Faith doesn't say, I'll just accept this. It says, no, I'm going to break through. He cried out so much the more. I like how the King James says that. So much the more. What did he say? What did he say with the shrieking cry the second time? He just reinforced what he said the first time. Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. I mean, he just kept on and kept on and kept on. He's a lot like the woman back at the beginning of the chapter that's the widow with no hope before the corrupt judge. He's in exactly the same situation, except that lady was just a parable. She was just a fictional story. Bartimaeus is a real guy in real time encountering Jesus, but he did the same thing. Isn't it amazing how it's in the same chapter in your Bible? It's like there's an illustration and then there's a real case scenario. And I tell you, that's just how good God is. He wants you to know this is exactly how it's done. It's not done by following all the rules and regulations. The new covenant is not based on that. It's based on better promises than the old covenant.